Hey everyone, this is Kristen. I apologize for the crazy lighting that's happening right now. All of the lights in our house seem to be burning out at the same time. So my room, the lights went out this afternoon, so I'm using my standby light. So bear with me, but I wanted to talk about a more serious topic today, which is grief and chronic illness. It's a very real thing, and the reason that I kind of wanted to talk about this at this point is because it took me reaching a certain point in my grieving process, I think, to even be able to um, create this channel. Um, I kind of always had in the back of my mind that I wanted um, what I learned from my experience with chronic illness to help other people. I wanted to use it in that way. And so I actually did creative writing as my major in college. And so I kind of tinkered with the ideas of doing something in written form. But I think with the nature of the material and whatnot, and just kind of the way things are going these days in terms of media, YouTube kind of seemed to be a better fit for the material. But, anyways, all that to say, I've been thinking about it for a long time. And while there were kind of, I wanted to be at a certain point where I had kind of more concrete answers before posting anything, because I didn't want to cause more confusion or like for people to feel misguided when I was sharing my story if I didn't have answers. So I wanted to have some kind of diagnosis before I started filming, which was part of it. But even after I received my diagnosis, I didn't really feel that I could film until kind of I wasn't really aware of why, but I think for me, I realized is that I hadn't hit that point in my grieving process to be okay with doing this. So I just kind of wanted to share a little bit of my experience. I'm gonna try not to get too emotional in this. I don't think it'll be helpful for you guys, but I do want it to be something that um, is real and honest. So I will try to share from that place. Um, I think for me, the grieving process, I noticed it most at first, like when I was still living in California. Um, I know I mentioned it in the video about my diagnosis story a little bit. So at that point, I was having these attacks, which I was told were panic attacks. And whether they were or weren't, they were very scary for me. And at that point, I had still been contemplating about the idea of becoming a paramedic, had still been researching that. I had already done part of my schooling in Florida to become a paramedic, and kind of tossed around the idea of maybe doing something theology or getting into the education system in California. All kind of thoughts that I had had before. I kind of rotated around the ideas of going to seminary and medicine, and then the arts kind of were my areas of interest growing up. And so um excuse me. So I think part of the grieving process, though I didn't really know how to put it in words at the time when this very all first started, was just this sense of loss of um, regularity, predictability in my life. These symptoms would come on really suddenly, and it would just feel like I was completely out of control. And so it was a very like helpless feeling. And I didn't know what to do, and I felt like I wasn't getting where I needed to um, in the healthcare system, and I didn't have a way of doing that. And so there was a lost sense of stability. Um, like I didn't know how I was going to be able to work when things started getting really bad. When I moved back home, I was only able to work part-time at first. Um, Thankfully, my mom took me in and um, helped me get back on my feet during that time. And it was very humbling, but also just like it was difficult. It was really difficult. I like to be like independent. I like to be able to like provide for myself, and I didn't ask for help a lot back then. And somebody in California actually pointed out to me, like you need to ask for help more often. And I knew that I did. Um, but it was kind of like a lost sense of independence. There was a time when I couldn't drive for about 6 months because I was concerned I was having seizures, and the neurologist I was seeing at the time agreed, like, don't drive if you don't feel safe to drive. So for about 6 months, I was relying on family and friends who were super gracious to be driving me around and helping me get groceries and all of that. But like as I'm going through all of this, I'm not able to work the way that I used to. I wasn't able to work out the way that I used to, which I used to. That was like running and working out were just ways that I would connect with the Lord. Those were like really like ways that I dealt with like stress and like how I kind of centered myself, how I got out of my mind and into my body. It was like a very grounding experience for me. And so I also I just started to lose like mental capacity for things. Like I'm typically a big reader, and I definitely have done a lot of reading over the past few years, but not in the way that like I have been used to. And my cat is in here and is crawling on my lap, so you might get to see one of my cats here soon. But so I was losing my sense of identity in a lot of ways. Like I wasn't able to do the things that I was used to doing and loved to do and was passionate about. I very much like I didn't realize it at the time, but so much of my identity was placed in like what I would be doing as a career. And my cat is biting me, so I'm gonna get my squirt bottle here. Being rambunctious. Okay. So, anyways, I was losing my sense of identity. I felt like these things that God had put in my life that I was super passionate about, like I couldn't do anymore. So, like, what was the point of those to begin with? Like, like what was that? I There was another YouTuber that pointed this out, and I'm so grateful that she did because I think it really helped me process, like at a deeper level, was like a lost sense of time, because I was in my late 20s when everything started kind of going sideways, and now I'm in my mid 30s, and like you set those, maybe not everybody, but I set those expectations when I was young of, oh, I'm gonna be married like my parents when I'm like in my 20s, my early 20s, and I'll have 2 kids, and I'm gonna have a wonderful husband, and that's just the way it's gonna play out. I'm gonna, be a paramedic. I'm gonna like do all these things. It's gonna be great. And so to not have accomplished those things by that point in my life was heartbreaking in a lot of ways. And beyond that, I got to a certain point where, I'm having all of these symptoms. I'm having difficult going from day to day because, like, when my migraines were like multiple times a day, that was really difficult to manage. And then I started having muscle weakness and like attacks of this muscle weakness that I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know how to control it. Still don't fully know how to control it. And, the thoughts that are going through my head are, well, I'm in my 30s and a woman can only have kids for so long. I've always wanted kids. That's been a dream. I'm going to try not to get emotional. Okay. But I was questioning whether I was going to be able to have kids. When I got the blood clots, I was told by my gynecologist, that like because I had those blood clots, I would need to have Lovenox injections like every day if I were to get pregnant, so to make sure that I wouldn't get blood clots again. So even if I decided to have kids, it would mean not only managing my own symptoms and understanding how to care for like a newborn, but like the 9 month process itself would involve that. And so like I knew that I could do it, that if I needed to, but it's I was dealing with so many symptoms already that I didn't know that I wanted to put myself through that. It's it almost becomes like, how much am I willing to like torture myself to accomplish my dreams? Like, and so there's a lot of questions around that. And thankfully, the man that I ended up marrying, we like discussed during the dating stages. I was very upfront and was like, and at that time I thought I had multiple sclerosis, and I was just like, I think this is MS. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have kids. I've always wanted kids, but I don't know what this is going to look like. And he could go one way or the other, Um, and so thankfully we have that understanding in our relationship. But I think like it's been more difficult for me to be able to accept the idea of not having kids. And so there's been a lot of grieving to go through just like in this whole thing. And then you kind of, when you're dealing with chronic illness, you're going to all these doctor's appointments, you're trying to manage the like administrative side of it. And when I was dealing with a lot of this, it was during the pandemic. And like it was a really surreal experience because not only were we globally dealing with this pandemic where we're isolated and we're wearing masks all the time, and like that was at a whole nother level. But I felt like it was even more surreal because that wasn't even my prime concern. Like I was concerned about catching it because I didn't know if like I would have more severe side effects from COVID if I did. And so I tried to stay as well as I could, and following like the good hygiene and everything that was recommended. But like that was the beginning of the pandemic is when I had the blood clots. And so, and like part of me wonders if that was, maybe why I had unprovoked blood clots. I don't know. But it was so surreal. I just remember being in the emergency room for those blood clots and thinking, there's all these people here, and like so many people are terrified about this COVID-19. And like, I can only imagine what healthcare professionals are going through. And like, I just felt like I was like, fighting for my life in a different way. And so it kind of felt isolating in that way. Um, because like everybody was kind of on a different page, but also like I felt like I couldn't escape the possibility of getting COVID either, you know? So I was just trying to focus on surviving. And so um there was a lot of like lost sense of normalcy, of like reality being like so different than what I imagined it would be. And I know like life is never how we imagine it will be, but this was just so different. And I felt like I was like losing dream after dream after dream. And you know, I think that I couldn't really like process it all. Like I was in what I could, and I would, you know, like I would um like acknowledge those feelings when they came up, but I still felt like, especially as it related to having kids, like, and especially because like I knew that the decision might ultimately be up to me. Like, yes, I might be able to have kids, but I would definitely be high risk um, during the pregnancy, and I would need to see a specialist to like discuss those risks. And like, so I was taking all this information in from kind of a like, okay, this is what I need to do, like from a kind of like task management standpoint. And like I understood all that, but I just felt like I couldn't wrap my brain around like potentially not having kids and being okay with that. And yes, like a lot of it was like I wanted to, you know, I want to see my husband be a dad. I want to see my parents be grandparents. Like that would be amazing. I want to see my sister be an aunt. um, but I think, like, for me personally, the idea, like, of not having kids, not based on what other people want, but based on what I want, like, I couldn't figure out how to process that. And so it was something I really had to like honestly pray about. And I was just like, God, like I don't know how to pray about this. Like I don't I'm like I don't know how to like navigate this. And I, you know, I use mental health resources. I listen to like mental health care professionals on YouTube. I've like included links in previous posts, but and I've read like articles about grieving and listened to other YouTubers talk about grief and chronic illness, and those have been like super like helpful and validating and like reassuring. I've been in Facebook support groups that have been the same. I'm literally like in 5 Facebook support groups, and I can't tell you how helpful they've been. Like so helpful and validating, and just like knowing that I'm not alone in this process. But like I think what it came down to for me was like what I didn't realize was that I had this subconscious thought of like, well, it's okay. Like if I was never meant to have kids, I was never meant to have kids. Like taking even like the voluntary side out of it, like of my choice to have kids regardless of like whatever diagnosis I got back. Like on some level I thought, well, like que sera, like there's no use in getting upset about it if it was never meant to be. And like that was keeping me from processing it emotionally. And I had to recognize that don't know if I'm going to be able to get this out, y'all. I had to recognize that the dreams that I've had and the hopes that I've had are good ones, are beautiful ones. And without that, I couldn't get to this point where I am now of like sharing this. But I had to recognize that those were good things that I was losing. They weren't meaningless. So yeah, I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to share about that, but just for anybody that might be having a hard time also in their grieving process. Excuse me. This is not a how-to on how to get through the grieving process. I just want anybody else out there who is, experiencing similar things to know that they're not alone in that, and that if you're grieving, what you're grieving is worth grieving over, and the things that you have dreamt, the things that you have hoped for in your life do matter. And if you're not able to do those things, whether it's an outright, like absolutely out of your control and you can't do them, or if it's something where you've had to make a choice of not doing something because you're choosing you, that doesn't make the choice easy. And it is worth grieving over, because you are losing something, and you're losing something that's beautiful. So I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.